So welcome to this proctoring and certification session. Today we will discuss different aspects of recognition, certification and proctoring in Emoocs. In our panel we have the participation of Gabi Witthaus, who is a consultant researcher and workshop leader at Art of E-Learning. We have Yves Lehmann, who works on behalf of ProctorU for Europe and is also the founder of Ed21, an EdTech innovation cluster. And Mikel Labayen, who works for Smowltech in Spain, a company that offers an interesting automated approach to online proctoring. So we will start our session with brief presentations by each panel member, approximately 15 minutes each. They'll share their views, solutions, challenges, and afterwards we will have a 45-minute discussion. If you have any questions or comments, please take notes so you can share them during the discussion. Also, if you're tweeting, I'll be following the hashtag, so I'll be taking notes. So, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, hi everybody. My name is Gabi Witthaus, and I'm affiliated with two universities in the UK. I work at Loughborough University, which is a small research-intensive university in the middle of the country. And I'm doing my PhD through Lancaster University, but I'm actually here not representing either of them. I'm here in my personal capacity. You might be surprised at the topic of my presentation, which you'll see on the slides. I was originally going to be moderating this session, and then unfortunately one of the presenters, Alex from Russia, had to drop out. He couldn't get a visa to come. So I was asked at very short notice to present instead of chair. And I do hope that you'll find my presentation useful and relevant to, it is relevant to proctoring, but it's taking a much wider view than that. So I'm actually, the research I've been doing recently is on the recognition of open learning. I'll tell you a bit more about that in a moment. And what I want to propose to you today is an idea, a hypothesis that is in the early stages for me about how recognition of open learning is contributing to the unbundling or the disaggregation of higher education. So I'll be interested in your comments and any thoughts you have on this. So I'll start with a bit of background and some definitions. And then I'm going to look at what I'm calling the flavors of recognition. And I've got 5 different flavors there. Some of them fit in very nicely with earlier presentations that I've sat in today. And then I'm going to end with a question about the end game. Is the end game the disaggregated degree? So a bit of background. The research that this is partly based on was a study that I authored with a team from Leicester University for the EU Commission. Our second keynote speaker this morning was speaking about the broader opening up education program, which this Open Cred study was a part of. It was published in 2016, and basically we were looking at the extent to which learners who were studying through Moocs and other forms of open education were actually achieving some form of recognition for their learning. Actually, the research began in 2014 and continued into 2015, and it turned out we were a little bit ahead of our time. There was not much evidence of recognition yet at that stage. So I just want to do a quick definition check. There are different ways of looking at recognition, but basically the way that we looked at it in the Open Cred report and the way I'm using the term today is as the second stage. So the first stage, when a learner is assessed, goes through a proctoring process, gets a certificate or some credits, we're calling that credentialization. Recognition is then when they take those credentials to another institution or potentially an employer and say, will you give me some form of recognition for this, for these learning outcomes? So talking about unbundling of higher education provision, I hope you can see that well enough. I'm the screen I'm looking at it on is not as clear as it should be, but I've basically taken 4 elements of higher education provision: content, the teaching, or so-called delivery, support, which is usually provided in the form of tutorials, but could be other forms. I've heard of coaching and mentoring as well today, and assessment. And traditional higher education offers all those things as an entire package from the home institutions. So I've used the blue highlight to show that those are offered by the home institution. Potentially now, with the technology we have and the advent of Moocs and related opportunities, we can see places where we could have yellow highlighting in that diagram. So, for example, if you are using open educational resources in your teaching, or OERs, you are using content from another institution, an external institution, but your institution is still responsible for all the other elements. So that was just to show you a basic example of how this might work. So let's start looking now at the 5 flavors of Moocs that I mentioned in the overview. The first flavor is basic credit transfer, and it happens within a single institution. So we've had some examples already on the program today of Moocs on Coursera, on FutureLearn, on other platforms that are actually being recognized in degrees or are being combined to form whole degrees. For example, on FutureLearn, they have now 2 master's level degrees from Deakin University in Australia. And you do them on the FutureLearn platform, but you pay the Deakin University fees, and everything else is pretty much run by Deakin University. So in that case, what we have is still the same bundled model where Deakin University is providing all elements of the program. If we move on to a more interesting way of doing credit transfer, we have what I'm kind of thinking of as a virtual Erasmus program, where some universities are now beginning to recognize Moocs from other, particularly within the EU area. So where a student has achieved ECTS credits for doing a Mooc, those are being absorbed into degree programs from the home institutions. So, for example, the Open University in the Netherlands has now, in their BA program, they allow students a free option, 2 free options actually, to choose 2 15-credit modules that could come from somewhere else within the Open University Netherlands, not from the delivering department, or they could come from another institution within the Netherlands, or they could potentially come from any institution in the world offering a Mooc that is quality assured and has proctoring and accreditation and so on. In the case of Moocs, then the students would have to get permission from their program directors to incorporate that into the program. But here we have a completely new picture emerging, where the student is getting the content, the teaching, and the assessment from an external institution. I've put support with a dotted line around it because there are a few Moocs offering coaching and mentoring, but those certainly are in the minority. For the most part, when students do a Mooc, they don't get individualized, personalized support. It's kind of not within the spirit or the capability of the scale of Mooc provision. So that's the second flavor. The third flavor that I've come across is an external Mooc which is embedded into a home institution course. So this was one from the Technical University of Munich, and students were required to do a Mooc. They could do any English language Mooc of their choice by agreement with the program director. It had to be in English, and the idea was for them to improve their English language skills. And actually here we have the home institution in the bottom left quadrant providing the support for a MOOC externally provided. So only the content and the teaching are externally provided. There might or might not be assessment in the external MOOC. That was not necessarily relevant. So you'll have support and assessment, but the assessment provided by the home institution is assessment of the wider module into which this external MOOC is integrated. A third flavor of recognition that you might have come across is challenge for credit, also called challenge exams. Athabasca University is famous for this in Canada. Thompson Rivers, quite a few North American universities are doing this, where a learner would come to the institution and say, I want to do the postgraduate degree in X, and I know everything I need to know that I would have done on the undergrad program, but I just haven't done it at your institution. So they give them a challenge exam to do that. University of the Applied Sciences in Lübeck is doing something extremely interesting with Chiron. Chiron is a non-profit, non-governmental organization supporting refugees to work with through MOOCs. And Lübeck is one of the, FH Lübeck is one of the partners working with Chiron. And what they are doing is when the refugee learners have completed the MOOCs that they set out to do, basically they have a 2-year period in which to do a number of MOOCs supported by Chiron with mentors, counselors, buddies, and a very well-structured program of support. The students then come to FH Lübeck and say, I'm ready to go into year 2 of your program. So they've spent 1 year and they're ready now to start on year 2. And Lübeck then assesses them according to the outcomes of their year 1 program. So they are, and then they map the learners' progress or the learners' performance against what the learners achieved in the MOOCs, in the assessment of the MOOCs they did. So another way of doing this, but here you have content, teaching, and assessment provided by the external MOOCs, possibly some support provided by the external MOOCs. Here I've brought in a third party, and that's Chiron, which is providing support and supporting with the assessment. So, and then we have recognition by portfolio. So this is, many of you are probably aware of the term recognition of prior learning, RPL, sometimes called accreditation of prior experiential learning, APEL, and in North America often called PLAR, prior learning accreditation and recognition. So there have been various projects done with EU funding for this. One was the Learning Passport proposed by the VM Pass project. And the idea there was that there would be a central clearinghouse for Europe in which degrees and diplomas and higher education programs would be inputted, and all the learning outcomes would be recorded, and so learners requesting to have their MOOCs or any form of online learning recognized by another institution, that institution would be able to check that record, a more extensive record than currently exists for the recognition of ECTS credits. There's an example there from Australia as well. And here we have a similar situation with potentially an external body supporting, because this is I've used Chiron again here. Chiron is potentially looking at this for their refugee learners. So the question that I would like to end with is the end game ultimately the disaggregated degree? A few of us met last night at Madrid airport for tapas, and we had a very interesting pre-session discussion. And one of the questions that came up was, is the business model to really, for universities to disaggregate so much that they begin to specialize, and some of them offer more assessment and some of them offer more content production, and And yeah, we thought of our home institutions and thought of many, many objections that would be raised to that. The main one, obviously, is that MOOCs and this whole concept of open learning is only really possible because of the existence of traditional mainstream provision. And if we lose that, then the open learning it becomes disadvantaged and possibly not even available anymore. But I can give you a couple of examples of organizations that are working towards the disaggregated degree. One is the Open Educational Resources University, the OERU. They're an international consortium of higher education organizations around the world that are agreeing to recognize credits from each other in order for one partner within that consortium of about 35, 36 organizations would recognize credits given by all the other partners if a learner were to come to them and request the final degree, transcript and certificate. So I'll stop there because I see I've got 5 seconds left. But that's my question mark that I'd like to end on. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabi. All right. So, Mikel?
Yep. It's okay. Yeah. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mikel Labayen. I work as a project manager in Smowltech. Smowltech is a company which markets an online e-proctoring solution. Before I start with my presentation, I would like to show you a little video to have a global idea about our service. Okay, so let's a couple of minutes.
Hello there.
Sorry.
You have revolutionized the education system through MOOCs. MOOCs have gained popularity very fast. However, it is not easy to hold up your prestige in such a highly competitive market, even more so when your students are asking for formal certification. Small is an automatic proctoring and online user authentication system designed to meet the specific needs of MOOCs. During the learning process, the student may work properly or acquire inappropriate behaviors. Small takes images randomly with the user's webcam and compares them against the biometric model, which detects if the student is who it should be, if there is someone else helping, or even if there is nobody in front of the screen. All of this without disturbing the student in any way. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all year round. The flexibility of the system makes it possible to follow any type and number of activities during the course, leading to a more robust assessment and allowing higher formality in your MOOC certifications. Activate Smowltech to follow your assessment path. Monitor and authenticate students continuously in quizzes, video activities, forum discussions, final exams, and any other kind of activities. Get higher formality for your certifications and boost the value of your students' titles. Passive, continuous and automatic proctoring service for a flexible, reliable and scalable system. Robust continuous assessment for high formality certification. Small, is it really your student?
So, this is a short introduction about our service. No, doesn't work. Yeah, here. So we started offering this service in 2012. Okay, but we started in a global market of e-learning. In the last few months, we are working to adapting our system to MOOCs requirements. So we started working with different MOOCs, and in the middle of the analysis, we discovered your report, Gabi. It was a great work. It was really useful for us. And we realized that in Europe, the recognition is an important topic, okay, in the agenda. with the objective of modernizing the higher education. So we realized that in that moment, some MOOCs are working in credentialization, okay, to try to certify learners' learning outcomes or achievements. But it doesn't mean that these credentials are recognized with other institutions that award those credentials. For example, the ECTS. No, the gap between these two concepts is the formality of this credentialization. So we try to make an approach with our service to make those credentials more formal. Here's the one image that we took with your work, and here you propose an open learning recognition model, in which we can see a different characteristic on point of interest points. And here we focus on two of them, because we thought that with our system we can improve the experience in both of these characteristics. So using they are related with proctoring and supervision of assessments. So how small our service can help to become the assessments more robust. This is the global idea. And making the credential that we get be more formal. So this is the question. What can we do with a Small in a way to find a solution to formal certification? So Small is a continuous online student authentication system. Okay, we do both tasks. We identify the user, we authenticate them, and we continuously proctor during a specific session. Not only in the beginning, not only in the login, okay, but through the whole session, in different sessions during the whole course. This is the global idea. How does Small work? First of all, we register the student face. We take 3 different images, and then we create a biometrical model of the students. After this, every time the teacher wants to follow the students during an exercise, different exercises, in a video activity or forum discussions, or it can be the final exam, we are going to take randomly images using the student's webcam, and then for each image we are going to analyze what is happening in the other side of the computer. If someone is in front of the screen, if this person is the person who should be, if this person is having help with a friend or something else, okay? Or he is trying to cheat, putting a photo in front of the webcam, and they try it. So, and in the end, we create this kind of formal certification to say that during the whole course, in the different activities, we follow these students with this face. Our patented technology is, I'm going to be a little bit fast here, because all the process is working in the cloud, okay? The only requirements for the institution is to install a plugin or make a little integration with our API. And then for the final students, the only requirement is to have a webcam, because it doesn't need to install anything. We work with a cloud computing technology, okay? So the most important, the characteristics that makes it suitable for MOOCs. This is, I think, that important things in our system. It is continuous. When we say continuous, that it works continuously during the session, okay, but you can use it during the whole course in a specific session. They don't need to schedule. It's a flexible system, so you can enable it as a teacher. You can enable it whatever you want, whenever you want, and you can follow the student's activity. Then it's an automatic service, so it's an scalable service. And in case of we have some kind of images, because obviously we want to be passive for the final students. The students must be doing the exams. That is an important thing. So if we get, sometimes we get images because the student is writing down a note or is moving the moment we take a photo, so we take only part of face. So it's very hard to identify automatically this identity if we have only a half information. So in this moment, for this kind of images, all the images are sent to our manual validation processing, and one person is going to say what is happening in those images. For this reason, it's reliable system. Our services, we have two services. I think that the second one is the most common or most known, that is an exam proctoring. We enable a small only in the final exams, okay? But we are focused on the first one, in the continuous assessment proctoring, and we think that for Moocs this is the best way to add a value with our system, because we can enable our system not only in a final exam session, okay, but just through the whole activities that for the teacher or for Moocs are important in this course. So to do this, we must change a little bit the methodological system. You must have a course doing a different assessment during the whole course. But I think that we can gain a robustness using this kind of system in this way. This is the main idea. Just to finish, this is for us, there's more potential, no? The best interesting point. So imagine that you have a course. During the course, you have different activities. You have a common task, important tasks. You have key tasks for assessment. So with a different level of importance. So then you can follow these activities. You can follow all of them. You can follow only part of them, and you can follow it with different monitorization intensity. So we randomly take images, but we are able to take, if you want, 1 image per 5 seconds. It's a kind of video, or we can take it 1 image per minute. Okay, so I think that the combination between, if you are using it during the whole course, and if you can use it with a different intensity, you can have a very robust assessment path. So this robust path is going to give you more formal credentials and hopefully a recognition in other institutions. Not only because we are proctoring it, that we are saying that this is the right person, obviously, but in these 2 points, we can add some value. Some recognition. The Gartner Groups named us a cool vendors for our innovative solution in higher education in 2014. And the European Commission gave us a seal of excellence for the same reason. So that's all for me. So
thank you.
Yes.
Can I get this? Yes. So I'm not so good with PC anymore. So I think I have to see where it is. Okay. Is it working? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mikel and Gabi, Brenda. Yes. So I won't spend much time explaining. Oops, what's something?
If you just close it. Alt F4.
Alt F4.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Not very good with machines. I won't spend much time explaining about ProctorU. Like Small, it's about an all, about keeping the eyes open and being open 24/7 for proctoring. It's one of the first providers of online proctoring, and it is today the world leader with over 1,000 partner institutions and over 1 million exams being proctored every year. And so based on that experience, I'd like to address 2 very stupid questions and also open the debate about how, do's and don'ts about proctoring and certification based on our experience, and also why we think it's essential and how we can move from the MOOC certification, which is still a small market compared with higher and continuous education, into the mainstream of education. Should I take this one? Okay, thank you. So the first thing about the do's and don'ts about proctoring. Online proctoring doesn't work perfectly. I'll be the first to admit that. We do encounter every day some very concrete issues, and this is the state of the world today. Okay, it's not a perfect process. The issues we encounter on a daily basis are roughly of three ranges. First, we encounter lots of technical issues. Your connection breaks down, your computer is not working as it should, the video breaks, and all that. That's a fact. That's a fact of life. Compounded with that, when you do online proctoring, we find there are often language or cultural misunderstandings. Okay? To be compounded with the fact that your students are taking a final exam, so they are stressed out and they are not used to online proctoring. In the US, it's much more common, but here, when we are in Europe, we have to manage the fact that there can be language, cultural differences that we have to overcome, and for that, the human factor is important. The third issue we've come across was that of the integrity concerns. The two different pictures, both are how to get into the subway. One case is in Hong Kong, and you can see that in Hong Kong it's very open, you can go through. Why people just don't jump, okay? The second one is also a turnstile. It happens to be in New York, okay? It's a different game. I didn't show you how it is in Paris. It looks like a bank, you know, like a vault, because people are just so undisciplined. So we need to adapt the level of proctoring to the culture and the situation of each country. Okay, it's not a single solution. We need to adapt to that. Then a common thing, it may seem obvious to you, but we are encountering this with our partners when we do the onboarding, is can you do proctoring as you do the physical exam, which is everybody takes the same exam at the same time, the same day at the same time. And very clearly, in the case of online proctoring, it's a recipe for disaster. For the reason I explained before, onboarding and verification takes time, 5 to 10 minutes for each person if it goes smoothly. When it goes wrong, it's a different story. So it's unrealistic to have a single start or a mass launch process. And you need to incorporate that into the design of your exam. So how can you achieve the reason, okay, the reason why institutions do a single start is that because they want to have equality of treatment and they want to have fairness between all the students. How do you achieve integrity and equality of treatment when people start at different times? Okay, so our experience there is that first you need to prepare alternative subjects. Okay, if my computer breaks down, I will sit again. So I need to have some spare subject. That's the first level. The second level is to build a bank of exams and subjects, and that is what we see with TOEFL, TOEIC, GMAT, those exams, so that statistically no two students will be going through the same subjects. And then the third level, which is just starting to spread out, is to have an adaptive assessment, which means that in 1 hour of testing, you will achieve a much better accuracy of assessing not only the knowledge, but the competency on a specific topic. And you'll be also able to fine-tune people with very diverse levels, which you may not have on traditional systems. This adaptive testing is also important because why do students cheat? The students cheat because they are afraid, especially if it's going to be a binary outcome. If it just fail or pass, okay, it's very stressful for your students. If you go into an adaptive system where there's no fail or pass, you just get a certain level okay? You know you can always improve on your level. You're going to keep the integrity. Then, very basic thing, can you allow for scratch paper? In traditional exams, you allow students for scratch paper. Very clearly, today we're at the age of computer-based training. If you want to have proper integrity, you have to give up on paper scratch paper and give students the tools. You can give them access to a spreadsheet or word processor, which will be as useful, if not more useful, than scratch paper and closer to reality. Also, and I agree with Miguel there, we've been talking about assessment of the final exam, but the certification is not just the proctoring of a one-time final exam. It's also a continuous assessment, which you can do. So in ProctorU, we call that UCard, where you do the authentication of your student at the beginning of the MOOC, and then at your convenience, you will do authentication during the course, whenever the student takes a lesson, can be watching a video, can be taking a quiz, can be random or can be systematic. And you will be able to check that the student is the one actually taking the course. That is very important. And you will also be able to compare the results of the continuous exams during the course of the MOOC with the results of the final exam. And if there's a discrepancy, that's an indication of potential fraud. So this is just to say that integrity of the exams goes beyond, you know, just watching someone, whether it's automatic or manual. And in our view, it cannot be just a service or a software. It's really the best of both worlds that you need to combine. Now, after talking about how, you know, to design the exams, why is it important? So first, this may seem obvious, but what do students care about? Students, their first priority when they join a university or institution is to earn a degree. And it still, you know, puzzles me why not all MOOCs don't offer certification, because that's what students are about. If you want to learn to drive, what you care is the final outcome, which will be your driver's license. It's the same thing in all teaching material. So in the first generation of MOOCs, we have kind of forgotten this important aspect, and I think we forgot about our primary user base, which are students and professional learners. Now it's time to realize that that's what the certification is about. And for students, they tell you, this is the certification, okay. This is what it's the most important reason for them. Now, for institution, why does it matter to do MOOC certificates? And same thing, we've forgotten two very basic things, is that a university's job is to issue diploma. This is what it's recognized for. The symbol of a university is the graduation cap. It's not the amphitheater. So what is your mission? And a more prosaic thing is that certification so far has been the basic, you know, the most obvious way to monetize and to cover the cost of a MOOC. So it's really a question of sustainability for the MOOC industry to move into degree-bearing MOOCs. And to go beyond in the industry, for Europe, the best analogy I could find is to say that we have this fantastic concept called the ECTS, which I think is the equivalent of the euro, and ECTS are the common currency of the knowledge economy. you are at the heart of the knowledge economy. And we have the opportunity of having a community of 500 million people with a common currency if we manage to have it convertible. The nice thing is that we have started the convertibility with the Erasmus program, which is still a niche market. Now with Moocs, if we can have portability and recognition of MOOC credits, we can really move to the next stage. And concretely, and I didn't coordinate with you, Gabi, but so actually you anticipated my conclusion. There are two things I'd like to see come about. The first is, can we build a directory, at the very least, of MOOCs with credits at the European level, and facilitate mutual recognition of MOOCs and online courses, really, that would give credit. The first step is to give the visibility of all these MOOCs. Today they are very well hidden. The second concept, so actually, Gabi, you're telling me it already exists, or it has been advocated in a research paper. It's been advocated. Okay, so I didn't do the research paper. We didn't do the research paper, but it is the same concept to say there should be a virtual passport of the MOOCs you have completed and for which you have had certification. And this is important because the same way that we're talking about, the common currency, the same way that if you want to borrow money, you need to have a credit history. And that is very important for the credibility of the whole system. Here, it's the same thing. You need to have a common passport that will say you have been certified with proper integrity standards and you have passed with integrity various MOOCs. So ProctorU is working already on the standards among its member institutions. We're trying to build that, and we really welcome the initiatives in this area.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so thank you all, and now I would like to open the floor for questions or comments. So, yes, please.
My name is Mark Hazelton. I work at edX. So we deal a lot with online proctoring, and I'm curious to know how do you set expectations for the success rates for proctored exams, meaning the success rates in terms of how many people are able to get through with cheating? Because at some point, at least we feel like the bar is often much too high, that the schools expect 100% compliance, like there's absolutely no way to cheat. With whatever proctoring solution you choose, which at least I don't think is a realistic goal. I mean, there's offline. There's also cheating, right? And at least in my book, it should be comparable. That the level should be comparable. But I'm curious to know, particularly for the vendors, like how do you manage that expectation with your customers?
Okay, there is no such thing as 100%. As 100% security. The analogy we'll take is that of credit card or airport security. And the other problem is that you can measure fraud better than when it's physical proctoring, because in case of physical proctoring, you cannot do mystery test taker, so you don't really have a benchmark about what is the security. Our approach is rather to prevent the fraud than trying to catch it. So it's a whole environment. So what we presented here are all the reasons how we make to to really discourage the fraud, and of course be able to catch it. Prevention is really the main point. Then, depending on the partners, different partners may have different expectations. Some partners are just doing it because it's like minimum service. They don't really care. Other partners are very, very sensitive. And in that case, we will advocate the maximum security, which is having both a live proctoring and then a recording, which is going to be watched, again and can be watched if needed by the partner. So you can have a range, depending on the partner's expectation. You can have graduation of security services.
So, and I agree with you. It's a good point. It doesn't exist 100% secure system. So here the point is how you can use our services to get closer to this 100% of security. For example, our technology, you can use it. First of all, it's a dissuasory technology. So the student is watching his face in a video, okay, and he's watching that we are recording an audio too. So they don't know in which moment we are taking a picture to analyze it. So obviously they can cheat, they can use it. But if you use this process not only in one specific moment, if you are using during the whole course, maybe randomly, then you must get this, you can get this approach and making it more secure. So here the thing is, yes, you can cheat it, obviously, but if you are using in a good way, you can have a secure system.
Do you like to comment?
I'm not I haven't got an answer to your question, but I'm not sure if the answers you received were really answering the question you asked.
My question was really more about expectation setting with the university. I mean, like you said, different universities have different requirements. In my opinion, like the more gates you put on the proctoring, the more false positives you're going to get. That like the more constraints you put on it, the more likely you are to catch people. And in a MOOC environment, you could be catching significantly large numbers of people that then you have to manually review their output, which can get prohibitively expensive. Like if you have too many false positives, it just becomes impossible to check them all. And so we end up having these conversations with universities around like, what are your expectations? How much effort do you want to put into this? How like tight do we put the controls, right? It becomes this dialogue around, it's not necessarily how important it is to you, but like how much risk are you willing to take, if that makes sense. And I'm wondering if you had struggled with that in conversations with your clients in any way.
So Dana Doyle from MIT, and we're currently working on proctoring with the MicroMasters. And we have a course team, and our course teams are all very different, and they have very high expectations. And I think that there is also the pressure of this being the first MicroMasters with a proctored exam. And so a lot of it is really trying to work through what does it mean, and what does it mean to not have 100%, and is that okay? And if they're getting into MIT based on this credential because they passed, you know, how is that compared to something where we have no control over it and it hasn't been proctored? So I think it is just going to be a lot of conversations for a while until everybody feels an area that they're comfortable in, because right now they're really just, they don't know what the expectations are, and they keep pushing them higher and higher, which is difficult, granted, but at the same time we just have to find that sweet spot, and I don't know that we have. Have you had experience finding that spot with someone where maybe they pushed really hard for something and then they were like, okay, you know what, maybe we didn't need to do that, or we should have done something differently? Like, have you had any experiences like that as far as like a learning opportunity from working with partners in this kind of newish area?
I mean, for ProctorU, we have definitely found the sweet spot with many of our partners. The largest partners proctor 100,000 exams per year with us, and they've been doing full degrees, full online master's degrees. So clearly they are confident about the the security of the process. I think it's more a question of education, of building reasonable expectation very often. The issue is that the institutions at the beginning don't know what to expect, so they will put a very, very high bar. We're at the stage for many cases, to take the analogy of, if you remember, when you had to use your credit card to pay over the internet. Many institutions are at that stage. They don't know. They freak out, you know, about what can you do or not do. So they will put very, very high expectations. At the same time, they may add contradictory constraints, saying, I want full local language support, and yes, I want to have 500 students starting exactly at the same time. And so it's an education process to move into something that's realistic. Over time, it smooths out and it's completely sustainable. We can testify about that.
Yes, so I totally agree with you. I think that some expectations are very high, but I think that with our experience, we are able to fulfill this expectative. Sometimes, as you said before, there is this kind of, you know, I want more security, or I expected one thing or another one, but I think that I can see that some clients has a very high expectative, but it's not as common in our clients, in our experience. So I must to say it, and not because we are better than others and our expectations are, or we are fulfilling all the expectations, but I think that it's a real way to say that we are able to fulfill these expectations, middle expectations at least.
Good afternoon, Anne Helsinger from École Polytechnique de Lausanne. We're currently working at an initiative to start to exchange MOOCs for credits between a couple of universities in Europe. We're experiencing a lot of practical problems, but that's not what I wanted to ask a question about. I was more interested in the idea of unbundling education. One of the advantages of having a research intensive university is that you have research and teaching very close together. How do you see that in the future if you start to unbundle education and we become only an accreditation institution and no longer a content providing, because the content is coming from our research programs as well. So don't you think that the content should stay with the universities as well?
Thanks for that question. I knew there would be some very difficult questions. Oops. I mean, I'm really putting the question out to you because I haven't really taken a view on this yet, but I do think that there will be arguments for and against this unbundling, and that certain types of unbundling will work well for certain institutions and not for others. Potentially, I can see a kind of specialization, not only in terms of discipline, but in terms of the kinds of the content areas and the ways in which you assess things, and the relationships that institutions have with particular players in industry, for example. So, yeah, someone said earlier on the program, I think they said prediction is for idiots or something like that. So I would very much hesitate to make any predictions there. But I would be very interested if there are other views in the room.
Right. Any other questions? Yes, please.
Perhaps let me rephrase it. What are there any, in European context, any data legal issues that are maybe a problem to outsource the proctoring?
Yes, we have some experiences in that way, but if you normally if you fulfill the European protection law of the privacy of personal data, so you don't have any problem. But yes, the institutions are really concerned, I think, about this issue. So here the difference is: are you working here inside the European community in fulfilling these laws or not? I know
to complement. One thing I'm very proud of, being French, is that in France, probably I think we have the most pain in the neck administration as it comes to individual data protection. Okay, so the most stringent, the CNIL is probably the most serious about this data protection. So it's been a very interesting experience as we've been working with FUN and with some French universities. I think there are two issues to be careful about. One thing about data privacy. One thing is to make sure about not recording something that is not necessary to record. So we have to demonstrate each time and adapt the fact, for instance, that the institution requires us to record the ID card, for instance, or to keep a recording. It's not systematic. We have to adapt to the requirement. The other thing to be careful about is about biometric data. Mm-hmm. In Europe, the regulation is more stringent than in the US, and you need a special authorization to do biometric data, including keystroke analysis. There are other differences, but each time we have to be cautious. There is one thing in the US where the US is also ahead. The US are very serious about individual data protection. They have put together a charter called the Student Privacy Pledge. I don't know if you've heard about it. So the Student Privacy Pledge, it's a very short one-pager about a certain number of principles about respecting student privacy, not reusing student data or marketing it to third parties and all that. And this is an area where the US are ahead of Europe in that respect. And that's something we could import into Europe, actually, and that would increase the confidence in the system.
Sorry, just to add, I think that the institutions are concerned about this issue. I think that we, as a part of this proctoring service, must to be concerned about it. So I think that it's really, really important because, you know, we are managing personal information. In our cases, the face image is a personal information. Also, we use a code to identify these images. We never link this image with a personal name, surname, or ID number. Okay, in our servers, only we have a face with a code. But then, as you said, in 2017, in the European community, is going to be a new law that considers the biometric data as a personal data. So we must to cover this issue. We must to consider that we have now a new personal data in our servers, which is biometrics. And also is a kind of number file, very big, huge amount of number files is a personal information. So I think that we must be concerned about this.
Hi, thank you. So I have also a question. So you might have answered it actually right now. I was wondering about cultural sensibility. So what do you do with people who have to cover their faces for religious reasons? So how does it work? Because when it's in the classroom, you can see their height, their voice, body language, other things. But now you did mention key recognition patterns as well. So I think maybe that's part of the answer. I don't know, Mikel, you have.
So we based our analysis in a face recognition, and now we are working in a voice recognition. So obviously, if we have a person who covers his face with a complement, we cannot be able to identify this person. Also, maybe he's speaking, yes, we can, but not with a facial recognition, obviously. But if you put this person in a in-person exam with a teacher, a physical teacher, obviously the teacher cannot be sure that the person behind this complement is the person who should be.
Now, it's clear that it's very important to be able to see the whole face, and also to be sure that the person doesn't have anything over the head, because he could be hiding or she could be hiding earphones. For that reason, it's not possible to have a headscarf. It's not a religious thing. Now, if there was the case, I haven't encountered it practically. If there was the case, the person could always ask to be proctored by a woman, or to be proctored by a Muslim woman if it was needed. You could always ask for adjustments. In practice, it hasn't been an issue so far.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, I had another question. What's the relation between your provision and your offering related to now the Tesla project? So there's a big European funded project called Tesla, who is developing testing seven different kind of e-assessment tools, both for formative and summative assessment. And they are looking for integration in present learning management systems of universities instead of outsourcing and unbundling.
Yeah, it's a good question. We know very well the Tesla project, because we are one of our clients is UOC, the University of Catalunya, who is leading part of this technical project, and who is working with us as a client in a different project. And so now they are interested to implement our solution as a part of a Tesla face recognition part, okay? Because as you know, Tesla has a different case throw, voice recognition, face recognition, so they are interested in our service. They use it as a client, and they are obviously interested. But here, the kind of problem is that obviously there is a university inside the project who makes the algorithms, but they are not interested. They are interested in developing the algorithm, but not giving or packaging these algorithms to a service. So in this moment, they have a kind of disagree in this point. So they are open to propose our technology to be implemented inside Tesla, but we are working on it.
Thank you.
And for ProctorU, we haven't been invited into Tesla. We'd love to participate. We really believe that we have to build all together the infrastructure. We are evaluated as part of a related project, which is OP4RE, the online proctoring evaluation, where we have been running pilot exams with the university as part of this project and as part of a nationwide evaluation in France. But we'd love to be on Tesla and maybe drive a Tesla to get there.
All right. Any other questions?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please. Yes, please.
This is kind of a follow-up question to the one that Mark was asking earlier about expectations. What proportion of learners do you find cheat, and what creative ways do they come up with to cheat the system?
I'm not sure, I don't understand.
Oh, okay. So your system is set up to identify whether students are cheating or not. Okay.
Yeah.
So what proportion or percentage of students are you finding do cheat, and how? What ways are they using to cheat?
That's a good question. As I said before, the system is a dissuasory system. So our clients have an idea that sometimes they are cheating, but when they are starting using our system, you have a video recording in your screen and voice recording signal in your screen, and then the users are a little bit concerned about this, and they don't cheat a lot. But the most common in our case is try to put a photo in front of the webcam. They try it, but then so we have an algorithms that try to detect this, and then, as I said before, we combine with a manual validation and with the historical with other images, and we can detect it. But I think that is the most common one. If Ricardo is presenting here, that maybe just this, I think that is the most. Or to be with another friends doing an exams. In one exams that they should be alone. That's another thing. I think that in Latin America, in Colombia and Mexico, that we are working is the most common, but sometimes it's because they are sharing a computer in the same room. So you can find one photo, for example, in a registration photo, 5 faces in one photo. So the algorithms goes crazy because it doesn't know who must to follow.
Okay, we don't measure cheat rates by principle. We say when we have integrity concerns, because we don't make a judgment, and we just flag to the institutions when there's a possibility, a suspicion of fraud, but we don't consider ourselves to be the judges of fraud or not fraud. It's up to the institution to decide. The actual, with that caveat, the actual fraud rate is actually much less than 1%. So that's our problem, is that in real life, I would say it's even less than 0.5% of actual suspicion, actual fraud or suspicion problem. So we have a problem that we don't have enough accidents to train our proctors. So what we do is, with our partner institutions, we actually continuously test our proctors with mystery test takers who are creative,
creative cheaters,
creative teachers who come out of the blue. I can't tell you all the creativity that can happen. There is the common method of saying, I'm going to put a post-it note on the side of my screen. That's going to be, so now systematically we make an inspection of the screen. The other technique, please don't tell that to your students, is to have 2 smartphones and to hide one on your lap or under your desk or something like that. So we might be doing a camera pan from time to time under the desk. It's really hard to say what people will do. That's why we're still recommending the live proctoring for that reason, because you don't know where the next concept will be coming through. Lately, we've been checking the wrists of people because we're concerned about smartwatch. Okay, the technology keeps moving. There is no definite answer in that respect.
Right. Thank you. So, any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I have a question for you, but also for the audience. So what do you foresee that will happen in the next 5 years in terms of recognition, proctoring, certification of Emoocs? And think also about ideal scenarios, realistic scenarios, and also our worst scenario. I know.
Okay, I think different institutions will take different approaches here. From seeing how the OER University has worked, it's certainly institutions that have a social commitment to spending public money on the public good, that are getting involved in trying to make university courses available at very low cost to learners, basically to increase participation in higher education. So they've ascertained from statistics gathered by the UN that there are at least 100 million adults in the world who have completed high school and would be eligible to go to university, but because of family commitments, work commitments and so on, they can't actually do that, and because of affordability. So there's a massive audience out there that could benefit from the opening up, the genuine opening up of higher education in a way that makes it affordable and flexible and accessible to people. I think it's going to be the organizations with a kind of a high-profile social conscience that will take that challenge on board the most. But I can see opportunities for very mainstream institutions to become involved in that kind of program. For example, going back to Chiron in Germany, mainstream German universities are agreeing to take refugees into their system through a process of negotiation and discussion. But there's a mediator in the form of this NGO. So I think there's going to have to be collaboration with state and public organizations and non-governmental organizations to really see the benefit of the potential of all this technology in the next 5 years.
Thank you.
So I think that MOOCs must sustain itself. I think that it's something realistic. So they need a new business model. So we think that certification must be a key in this business model. So in the next few years, I think that we will have more competitors in the proctoring market. I think so, because we have different approaches, so with different markets, with different needs. For example, ProctorU and Smowltech are different approaches that can be more suitable in one market or another. And I hope and I guess that in few years the proctoring will be more common in Europe, because it's easy to speak about proctoring in United States, I think so. And here in Europe we are starting now. And the same in Latin America. We are finding in Latin America easy market to implement our service. I think that they are prepared, they're changing their mind, they have other necessities, obviously. But here in Europe, I think that we need a couple of years, more or less, to have this idea in our mind and to have online proctors or online proctoring automatic system to follow our activities.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I'll be happy if there are more players and more competition, because I think that will also increase the market. I think if I can make a forecast and then look stupid, but I anticipate that MOOCs with credits and online courses with credit generally are going to become a significant part, I'd say 15 to 25% of higher education, at least in the first years of higher education. MOOCs are still a very, very tiny part. It's going to be the same thing as e-commerce as a percentage of general retail business. Now we have two scenarios. Either, as we do, the current universities build this market and integrate the MOOCs into their curriculum and start having this recognition, and we build this common market of MOOCs with credits, or we'll end up, like in e-commerce, with a few heavyweight players. Could be the existing MOOC platforms, could be some complete newcomers, could be some people like LinkedIn or Microsoft coming outside of the education world that will end up dominating some segments of higher education.
All right. Thank you. So I don't know if anyone in the audience would like to comment on this or have any other question. Okay.
I'm wondering about this because the cost of education is high. It's not like the cost of just getting a product from A to B. The cost of developing education on the part from the academic is still very high. So he or she has to invest a lot of time and money for that. I used to work at the Open University in the Netherlands, and we were looking at new business models to sustain ourselves. And the fact was, the only thing that we could protect was the certification. But people are not willing to pay the full amount for a certificate. They're willing to pay the full amount, like the tuition fees, whether that is in a subsidized environment, whether that is 2,000 or whether that is 12,000 euros. They're willing to pay that for a full program of 2 or 5 years, but they're not willing to pay that for only a few certificates that you're going to give them. So who's going to pay for the content in the end? It's not the learner. It's not the university. Is it the government then? But is it the national government or who?
Oh, it's a good question. So I think that the student must pay at least part of it. And I agree with you that they are not willing to pay some kind of certificate. So for this reason, we are speaking here about the formal certification. So maybe if this certification is related to ECTS, okay, that they are recognized in a labor market, and maybe they are willing to pay for it. Now, if it is just enough to sustain a MOOC, I don't know, because we have a proctoring company, and I don't know. I know that you have a very high cost, education very high cost. So I think that you must find another ways to get money to sustain to your activity. But I think that the final student must to be part of it and pay for the certification. I think that in USA it's more common to pay for the certification, or they are used to be or they are I'm not going to say they are willing to pay it, but I think that they are more used to do it.
Yeah, I just wondered because in this isn't it that it's quite bound to our systems where the state is funding the institutions. I mean, then it's very attractive for students, and it's bundled together with the university, with a program, then you get money, and for the students it's not a lot to pay. So as long as this doesn't change, and maybe there is a different system of funding, at least in the countries where that's the case, I think that this is the only game changer we are waiting for, because if the student gets his money or rights or whatever, how you tell that, and he can spend it in different institutions, then we are talking.
The experience we have in comparing Europe and the US, in the US, the students are used to paying the full cost of the tuition, and for them it's normal to spend $20,000 or $30,000 per year for tuition. In Europe, the cost is more 15,000 to 20,000 euros per year, but usually the students are not used to paying for it. If the students were to pay for it, very quickly they would move to online courses, which are much more, when you say it's more expensive, I don't agree. A MOOC is more expensive to make on an individual basis because you invest more, but you're going to reach many more students with the investment. So on a per student basis, it's much more cost efficient. And what I anticipate is that European students are going to go the same way as Greek pensioners. When, I mean, our governments just can't afford anymore to keep going with the current system, okay? Both the high cost, carrying the high cost, and also the high dropout and failure rate in the early years of higher education. So there is going to be some reality check one way or another. And the people, the institutions who have advanced and moved to MOOCs will clearly have an advantage in that environment.
Yeah, but probably you will have a differentiation between scalable online courses. They will be cheap, but on the other side, I mean, and that's what you're talking about, there is something more to it in the research universities, which in the end, if you come higher up in a program, I mean, we all teach the same introductory courses in biology, statistics, mathematics, whatsoever. But then if you end up, there is a limit to scalability if you are talking about a knowledge market where we have to keep up, because otherwise we are just all the same, and yeah, then it's the end of the system too.
I agree. I don't think that MOOCs are going to replace traditional education. That's why I said my prediction that it would be something 15 to 25%. And the best mix is that it's a blended thing. I really hope we don't move to a full online education, because university is a great place to go and meet people and discuss and live, and that's why we're all here together. We're not on a webinar as well. Thanks God. It's a mix. There has to be a secret sauce between online and physical. There are so many ways of learning. Just that we haven't found the balance yet.
Just to elaborate a little bit more on the difference between the US and the European system, because we are in European MOOC Summit, so it's about the European context. And I did a lot of research about the European context, and then there are differences to the US. I won't summarize all of them, but the main consequences behind this is that the European system is more governmental funded, more social related, while the US fund is more mixed private-public funds. And as a consequence, you see that in Europe, for example in the US, only 12% of higher education institutions are producing or are in the next few years producing MOOCs. Well, in Europe, it's more than 4 times higher. More than 45% of the institutions are producing MOOCs. Why? First, to reach new kind of students as part of continuous professional development, but most other is to innovate their on-campus situation, like a blended situation where you have more online or more blended hybrid education. But the social system is very important. For example, you can say students have to pay for proctoring or for credits. In Germany, regular students pay 0 fee. So they will not pay for credits. And in most European systems, except for the UK, the fees are very low. So for regular students, it's not feasible to get payment for a credit, unless the institution is paying for that as part of the social system. And they are only doing this if it's for better quality or to outreach new students as part of the regular programs. Just a reflection.
Maybe I can just add something. Can I?
I am Ricardo Bella from Smowltech. Well, I think that there are another market that I think is going to be for the MOOCs a big issue is the companies. They spend a lot of money training their people, and it's a lifelong learning. And we have to think that their MOOCs, or the MOOCs that we have to create, they have to be more closely to the needs of the companies. And I think that there is a big market down there. But we have to think not just in a student for the universities. We have to think in another kind of students that maybe, well, you know, you need to be continually learn new techniques, new technology, or whatever. And then I think it's a big issue down there. That is a reflection too.
Okay. Would you like to add?
Can I just go back to what Darko was saying? I thank you for that analysis of the US and Europe. I think within Europe, it's not a monolith either. As you've said, the UK is extreme, and it's about to raise student fees, assuming the current government gets re-elected. If the Labour Party gets elected on the 8th of June, we will have a radical new approach to student fees. But let's not go there now. But when I was doing the Open Cred research a couple of years ago, one of the people I interviewed was a German student who had done a MOOC on algorithms and data structures through the University of Osnabrück. And he had, of his own accord, decided it was worth signing up for the exam. And he had paid the fee. He had the option between paying a smaller amount to do the online exam with online proctoring or going to the venue for the face-to-face exam. He paid the 120 euros or whatever it was for the face-to-face exam because he wanted to meet his MOOC instructor. He wanted to meet the professor, and he thought the exam would be the ideal opportunity to do that. But one thing he said to me was he really wished that his own institution would recognize this MOOC. He was pretty sure it wouldn't because it was a private Catholic university with, well, he didn't really know. He had to, but he was prepared to make that investment himself because this was a specialist subject that he couldn't get from his own institution. And his plea, his request to MOOC providers and to institutions was, why don't you allow us to specialize, give us extra electives and options that we don't have through our own institutions? It's such an obvious way to make the learner experience more interesting, to give them greater choice, and especially in a system where they don't have to pay. I suggested that at my own institution once, and I was shouted down because people said to me, students are already paying £9,000 a year, and then we're going to say to them, go off and do this MOOC for free as an option. But in a situation where students aren't having to pay a lot for their education, it makes complete sense to do that.
All right. Thank you. So we only have 3 minutes, so I don't know if someone wants to share something else in the last 3 minutes, or if you would like to say any final words.
I think it would be one thing that would be great if there were more students here for the debate, and whatever is the outcome, we don't know. But what is very exciting about this activity, about education in general, is that hopefully the innovation is being driven by the students and by the learners. They are telling us what they want and what works. So as Gabi was saying, contrary to popular knowledge, students want to learn something, so they are asking to take electives and to take extra MOOCs. If only we could give them the credits for these extra MOOCs, that will be a big incentive. Also, we see that our current system has lots of inefficiencies, and that's why we see the dropout rate, or people taking some strange thing. They will skip the class and follow a MOOC on the side, and strange behavior. And in the end, we don't know what will happen, but we can trust our students to be very imaginative. So we just have to listen to them and trust them to do what's good for them.
All right, thank you. So on that note, we end the session today. Just please, let's give a round of applause. Thank you.